A cop is sued twice for separate actions on the same day. Get all the details here. What's in the news were stories on bad cop resigns, a cop kills his own baby, kid arrested for a finger gun, Musk smoking a joint was costly for taxpayers, ABC is fake news, and a coward prison guard. Finally, an Ask Me Anything segment where I answer your questions on talent shows, all caps writing, and non-voting. This episode is brought to you by Health Excellence Plus, a health share that has saved my family thousands of dollars and can save you money too. Also brought to you by ForkFest, the annual decentralized Libertarian camping event that happens around PorcFest, with no tickets and no one in charge. Also brought to you by my dozens of supporters.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week. From the state with the lowest paid state legislatures in the country, and possibly the world, at $100 per year, this is the show where I shoot from the lip to bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Rebellion needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at TheLavaFlowPod. This is episode 142, Cop Sued Twice in a Day. And it's Tuesday, October 22nd, 2019, when there have already been more than 717 people killed by police this year, and the United States debt clock shows us at more than $22,843,200,000,000 in debt. What's rustling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. Normally, I handle bad cops in the news or in a separate segment, but this case deserves a much more detailed examination, and it really rustles my jimmies. I mean, you've got to be a special kind of law enforcement officer to have not one, but two lawsuits filed against you in the same day. Hamilton County Deputy Daniel Wilkie is that kind of special. The Tennessee law enforcement officer managed to violate rights against enough people that two of them retain lawyers. This suggests that Deputy Wilkie violates rights on a regular basis, but maybe not egregiously enough to merit a lawsuit in every single case. Both cases here are disturbing, and they're disturbing in very different ways. I've never read a civil rights lawsuit against an officer that included claims of a forcible religious experience, but that's where we find ourselves. The first lawsuit, filed by Shandell Riley, alleges that Deputy Wilkie followed her to a friend's house from a nearby gas station. Once he had sort of pulled her over, things got weird quick. First, Deputy Wilkie claimed that Riley was holding meth. To prove this, he engaged in a full-body pat-down. Then he ordered her to take off her bra and shake her bra and shirt to prove that she hadn't stashed any meth there. Riley asked for a female officer to be present during this search, but the deputy told her the law doesn't require female cops to search female citizens. He then asked if she had anything illegal in her car. She said she had a marijuana roach stashed and a pack of cigarettes. At that point, Deputy Wilkie became verbally abusive. Then he decided to strike a deal with the alleged criminal. We'll go to the lawsuit for that because, well, it offers the driest recounting of a positively insane situation. Wilkie then approached plaintiff and asked her if she was saved and believed in Jesus Christ. Plaintiff stated that she believes in Jesus Christ, but that she was not saved by her own choice. Wilkie then told plaintiff that God was talking to him during the vehicle search, and Wilkie felt the Lord wanted him to baptize the plaintiff. Wilkie further told the plaintiff that he felt the Spirit. What the actual fuck? I mean, these are words coming from the mouth of a sworn peace officer, and that's not the end of it. The option given to Riley was to participate in this highly unconventional baptism presided over by an officer of the law, or get thrown into the gaping maw of the criminal justice system with as much force as Deputy Wilkie could muster. If Riley agreed to a baptism, Wilkie said he would only cite her for marijuana possession and speak to the judge on her behalf. Riley complied with Wilkie's demands, of course, which included grabbing towels from her friend's house and following Wilkie's cruiser out to a nearby lake. At the lake, Riley and Wilkie were joined by Deputy Jacob Goforth, who did nothing as Wilkie proceeded with the baptism. From the lawsuit, Wilkie told plaintiff that Goforth was present because, in order for a baptism to be valid, a witness must attest to the ritual. Wilkie then stripped nearly naked with only his boxer shorts on. Wilkie then gave plaintiff the option to strip too, but plaintiff declined. Wilkie then led plaintiff into the near waist-deep and frigid water, placed one hand on plaintiff's back and his other hand on plaintiff's breasts, and completely submerged plaintiff under the water. Wilkie held plaintiff underwater for several moments, then with his hands still positioned on her back and breasts, raised plaintiff from the cold water. Plaintiff was shivering uncontrollably and felt horribly violated, and of course she would. Unfortunately for Riley, I doubt very much that there's a case that will easily eliminate Wilkie's qualified immunity defense. But hopefully the court will recognize that this is absolutely batshit crazy enough that it doesn't need to find a case on point to find Wilkie violated her rights. The second lawsuit, filed in the same court on the same day, alleges that Deputy Wilkie engaged in a suspicious stop that turned into an impromptu roadside and cavity search after the beating of a handcuffed man. And oh my God, does it start with one of the dumbest things an officer has ever said to defend a pretextual stop. From the lawsuit, Wilkie followed plaintiffs and conducted a traffic stop of the plaintiffs on the false claims of a window tint violation, and that he could smell the odor of marijuana as Wilkie followed the plaintiffs in their car. What? This assertion of Wilkie's exceptional olfactory sense is followed by a parade of brutalities inflicted on the passenger of the pulled-over vehicle at the hands of the deputy. Fortunately for the plaintiffs, this whole interaction was recorded by the dashcam video. Here's the lawsuit's description of those events. Wilkie handcuffed James, and the individual defendants took James to the front of one of their police vehicles. Wilkie then began to grab James's genitals. When James told Wilkie that James had an untreated and large hernia and that Wilkie's actions were causing James pain, Brewer and Wilkie jerked James' arms high above his back and slammed James face down onto the hot engine hood, causing injury to James. Wilkie and Brewer then beat James with fists, knees, and feet, slammed James to the ground, and continued their brutalization of James. Wilkie and Brewer then removed James's pants and shoes while still beating James. Wilkie and Brewer then forced James's face back onto the hood of the same police vehicle and continued to jerk his arms high above his back and beat James. While Brewer continued to force James's face back onto the hot hood of the same police vehicle and jerk his arms high above his back, Wilkie donned a set of gloves, pulled down James's underwear, and conducted an anal cavity search of James. The lawsuit goes on to note that James suffered numerous injuries, including tearing of his anus and an aggravation of his existing hernia. Well, of course, he was basically raped on the side of the road. The charges brought against James, the deputies discovered drugs in his underwear apparently, were all dropped after the dashcam video was made public. Deputy Wilkie has been suspended, but it's the nice, cushy, vacation kind of suspension that means he'll be paid to do nothing while the sheriff's office decides what to do with him. You know, it would seem obvious that he's way too expensive to keep around, but you never can tell in today's police departments. Other, more expensive cops have been kept around for years. Just ask the cop who killed Eric Garner. He cost the city of New York $5.9 million and kept his job for more than 4 years after the case was settled and more than 5 years after he murdered Eric Garner. But you know, there's a simple solution to all of this. Instead of these cops costing taxpayers money, they should be costing themselves money. Nothing is going to change until these officers are held personally accountable for their actions. There is no other industry in the world where you can commit crimes and not be held accountable personally, except government. This is one reason I support private police forces. It would be much easier to hold private police personally responsible. And it would even likely create an entirely new type of insurance, something similar to malpractice insurance for medical doctors. Then, insurance companies can decide who is worth covering themselves or who is too big of a risk to cover, since insurance companies have to make a profit on their policies or they can't remain in business. Now, I imagine that private police departments would be much less likely to hire someone in their departments if the person could not be insured. Either way, the free market can provide. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out a dozen ways it could provide better than what the current system is doing.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In Bad Boys Update news, the Fort Worth cop who shot and killed a woman playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew in her own home has resigned. Now, I first brought you this case last week, so this is an update. Aaron Dean, 35, was hired by the police department in 2017 and started in the field in 2018. The Fort Worth PD said that before they could terminate the employment of Aaron Dean, he resigned. A few hours later, they announced that Dean was being charged with murder. The next day, Dean made the $200,000 bond and was released from custody. I'm so glad to see they're actually charging this asshat. The charges that Dean is facing for a shooting on duty are extremely rare. According to work by Philip Stinson, an associate professor of criminal justice at Bowling Green State University in Ohio, he says, between 2005 and April 2017, 80 officers had been arrested on murder or manslaughter charges for on-duty shooting. During that 12-year span, only 35% were convicted, while the rest were pending or not convicted. That is 80 officers arrested in a 12-year span. Numbers show that police shootings resulting in the death of a citizen average about 1,000 per year. Judging by those percentages, the likelihood of an officer being punished for a shoot are minuscule. So this means that at this point there is about a 35% chance that this murderer will face actual justice. And if that justice does come, it will not be swift, since the wheels of supposed justice in this country turn slowly. Don't hold your breath on this one, folks. In more Bad Boys news, a New Jersey police officer and his wife have both been indicted for the death of their 3-month-old baby last year. The Mercer County Prosecutor's Office announced that Daniel Bannister faces a first-degree murder charge after a months-long investigation into the killing of his daughter, Haley. According to authorities, the police officer and his spouse are accused of repeatedly abusing their infant daughter throughout her short life. Court documents reportedly claim that Officer Bannister was responsible for injuries that Haley suffered from early October until December 5, 2018, the day that Catherine Bannister called 911 to report their daughter was having trouble breathing. Officers said in the statement, medical personnel determined Haley suffered a fractured skull, brain bleed, and had multiple fractured ribs. The 3-month-old died just 6 days later from her injuries. Mercer County Prosecutor Angelo Onofre explained, it was concluded that Haley's cause of death was complications from blunt impact trauma of the head, including skull fractures and subdermal hemorrhage. The nature of Haley's injuries indicated an ongoing pattern of abuse. You know, there are no words for the scum of the earth like this, but you can bet your bottom dollar that this violent asshole who beat and killed his own baby would have had no compunction about beating you or some other random person on the street to death. Fuck this motherfucker in the neck. As most of you know, I was laid off from my 9-to-5 director of IT job last summer. Among the many terrifying things about losing your job is losing your health benefits. Our family went about 6 months without any kind of health insurance, and the anxiety and worry that came along with that was not insignificant. But after spending dozens of hours researching our options and quickly rejecting the $2,000 a month price tag that came with the options available with traditional insurance, we found Health Excellence Plus, a health share that was a fraction of the cost, and we're glad we did. Only a few weeks after joining as members of this health share program, my wife was diagnosed with a common skin cancer that requires an expensive procedure to remove the cancer and another surgery to repair the damage done from the cancer removal. When this is all said and done, Health Excellence Plus will have saved our family thousands of dollars, and I'll bet they can save you money too. Health Excellence Plus is a health share that meets the requirements of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. A health share is a community of like-minded, health-focused members who have joined together to share each other's medical costs above an amount they can comfortably afford. A health share is not traditional health insurance. It is designed to be a catastrophic coverage for major items, like my wife's surgery. The cost of an average family insurance policy for a primary 45 years old with a $5,000 deductible is $1,450 per month. A Health Excellence Plus $500 initial insurable amount with a healthcare strategy is only $783. Get started saving money today at thelavaflow.com/health. That's thelavaflow.com/health. In Indoctrination Center's Bad Boys News, a 12-year-old girl pointed finger guns at other kids, so cops handcuffed and arrested her. A 12-year-old girl who attends a middle school in Kansas City made her fingers into the shape of a gun and pointed it at several of her classmates. These kids had bullied her relentlessly, her mother said. The girl now faces a felony charge for making threats. The funny part of this is that in Kansas, actually bringing a gun to school would only be a misdemeanor, while this girl is being charged with a felony for making threats. Talk about cognitive dissonance. School resource officer Dana Harrison, the school's police officer, arrested the girl and escorted her off the premises in handcuffs. She was taken to a juvenile detention facility and will face a felony charge of threatening to commit violence. According to the police, the girl was asked by another classmate which 5 people she would like to kill. She then pointed finger guns at several other students, several of whom had picked on her relentlessly, her family claims. And finally, she pointed the finger gun to herself. Overland Park Police Chief Frank Donchez said, "The safety of our children in school is paramount, today more than ever. We have all seen cases where tragic incidents have occurred, and the first thing people say is, there were signs. Why didn't they see the signs? Give me a fucking break." But sadly, this is not at all unusual. Stunning annual crime statistics compiled by the FBI show that between 2013 and 2018, the most recent year for which complete data is available, at least 30,467 children under the age of 10 were arrested in the United States. And the number skyrockets for children between the ages of 10 and 12, with 266,321 arrested during the same 6-year time span, according to the data. What the actual fuck? In I Can't Make This Shit Up news, Elon Musk smoking Joe Rogan's weed somehow put taxpayers on the hook for $5 million. Last year, Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk went on YouTube host Joe Rogan's show and smoked some weed. That was unfortunate because SpaceX happens to be a U.S. military contractor with security clearances, and the U.S. government does not like marijuana. And in this instance, it disliked it so much that it spent $5 million to demonstrate its displeasure. The U.S. Air Force initially seemed like it didn't know what the hell to do about the incident, but it later emerged that top officials at NASA, including Administrator Jim Bridenstine, were seriously peeved about Musk's decision to light up on air. NASA then decided it would require SpaceX, as well as competitor Boeing, to go through an intensive safety audit and cultural review that it described as ensuring the companies are meeting NASA's requirements for workplace safety, including the adherence to a drug-free environment. According to a report by Politico, SpaceX's review ran up a $5 million tab that will go on the taxpayers' dime. According to Politico, one industry source said that NASA has never ordered such an extensive safety and culture review before, to the point where both SpaceX and Boeing were confused as to exactly what it was. In addition to interviewing employees at all levels of SpaceX, the review entailed having the company do some reefer madness shit like educating its employees and ensuring they are following strict guidelines for federal contractors barring illegal drug use. While SpaceX initially footed the $5 million bill, NASA agreed to reimburse it in an arrangement that Politico similarly described as highly unusual and likely unprecedented. Despite NASA telling Politico that the repayment to SpaceX was standard practice, Boeing has not been reimbursed. That raises the question of why the company whose CEO started this entire mess got repaid instead. But Boeing might have decided that it wasn't wise to open its mouth about the matter, as it's received $4.8 billion from NASA as part of the long-delayed Commercial Crew Program, significantly more than SpaceX's $3.1 billion. You know, this is just typical of government, and this is likely one of the steepest fines for pot ever, at least to the taxpayers. But that is nothing on the billions spent around the country on the failed drug war every year. Hell, frankly, Musk is lucky he wasn't shot, as so many people are in this drug war every single year. But it is you and I on the hook for this madness. Fuck NASA in the neck with a reefer cigarette. Oh wait, they might actually get high and like it. I had the awesome pleasure of joining liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians for the 3rd annual ForkFest in June in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire, and I had a blast. I've now been to all 3 ForkFests, and I don't plan on missing a single one. This year, the event at least tripled in size from last year, with tons more people there and several food vendors. ForkFest is a decentralized camping event where no one is in charge. This means there is no ticket cost to attend the event. This also means that you are free to create whatever experience or event you want or would like others to enjoy. You can connect with other ForkFesters via the unofficial Telegram chat or the ForkFest forum at the unofficial website forkfest.party. That's forkfest.party. Keep an eye out for the dates for next year's event, which will likely be in late June. I hope to see you at ForkFest next year. In fake news, during both evening and morning broadcasts, ABC News showed footage from a gun show at the Knob Creek Gun Range in West Point, Kentucky. Except they told viewers that it was a showdown between Syria and Turkey. A network representative said, "We've taken down video that aired on World News Tonight Sunday and Good Morning America this morning that appeared to be from the Syrian border immediately after questions were raised about its accuracy. ABC News regrets the error." Senior foreign correspondent Ian Panel, who is in Syria, said Monday on Good Morning America, "This video, obtained by ABC News, appears to show the fury of the Turkish attack on the border town of Talabdaya." As he spoke, ABC aired footage showing undisclosed gunmen firing tracer bullets at undisclosed targets, causing massive, fiery explosions. Furious stuff indeed. Earlier on Sunday, ABC News anchor Tom Lamas also aired the allegedly shocking footage, claiming it showed a fierce Turkish attack on Kurdish civilians. He said, "This video right here appearing to show Turkey's military bombing Kurdish civilians in a Syrian border town, the Kurds who fought alongside the U.S. against ISIS. Now, horrific reports of atrocities committed by Turkish-backed fighters on those very allies." Now look, I'm sure that this was just some overeager engineer who wanted to find some crazy footage for their segment, so he just used something he could find and lied about it. But come on, not a single producer, not a single fact-checker, and not a single on-air personality caught this? But some random guy on Twitter can? Mainstream news is not news, folks. It is infotainment at best, nothing more. Stop listening to the talking heads of fake news. In more Bad Boys news, a prison guard who hid while an inmate that he released raped a nurse at gunpoint cannot be sued, according to the 7th Circuit Court. You heard that right, folks. A federal court has ruled that a prison guard who flouted protocol and unshackled an inmate, who then terrorized a local hospital, cannot be sued in connection with the incident. Writing for a unanimous 3-judge panel, Judge Frank H. Easterbrook of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit Court ruled that while the officer, Sean Loomis, is a feckless coward, no shit, current case law has not clearly established that permitting a prisoner to escape violates the Constitution. Unfit to fucking exist. Loomis is thus protected by qualified immunity, a legal doctrine which effectively holds that public servants can only face criminal suits if the conduct in question has explicitly been ruled unconstitutional in an earlier case. On May 8, 2017, Tywin Salters, an inmate at the Kane County Jail, drank hydrogen peroxide and ate a jail-issued sandal in an apparent suicide attempt. He was then transferred to the Delnor Community Hospital and put under Loomis's supervision. Loomis unshackled Salters on multiple occasions, leaving him unsupervised and allowing him to walk around the hospital without restriction. On May 13th, during one such instance, Loomis removed Salters' restraints for at least 30 minutes. The inmate then stole Loomis's handgun, which was not holstered. Loomis failed to subdue Salters and did not alert hospital security personnel of the situation. Instead, now get this shit, Loomis ran and hid in a fucking closet. Salters then forced a nurse to remove her clothes so he could put them on. He then took another nurse to a hospital decontamination room where he raped her at gunpoint. After a standoff with a SWAT team, Salters was shot and killed. Victoria Wieland and Deanna Crones, who were patients at the hospital at the time of the incident, sued Loomis, arguing that they have suffered post-traumatic stress and anxiety as a result of Loomis's negligence. The U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois Eastern Division sided with Weiland and Crohn's. Last month, the Seventh Circuit Court overturned that ruling. In his opinion just released, Judge Easterbrook rejected Weiland and Crohn's claims that Loomis violated their 14th Amendment rights, observing that the Due Process Clause generally does not condemn official negligence. Qualified immunity is nothing more than our rulers protecting their armed thugs who make sure that we stay ruled. It is the government investigating itself and determining there's nothing to see here. Please, tell yourself that you're not being ruled.
Ask me anything. Roger will answer your questions about, well, anything. Do you have a question for Roger? Email ama@thelavaflow.com or add your question to the latest AMA thread in the Pax Libertas Productions Facebook group.
It's that time again. I'm going to answer your burning questions. Remember, you can ask me your question by adding it to the thread that I post in the Pax Libertas Productions Podcast Fans Facebook group or by emailing me at ama@thelavaflow.com. Or if you are awesome as fuck and you support this show, you can ask me your question in the Lava Flow Super Supporters Facebook group or in Patreon. So let's jump into the questions. If you recall, I mentioned one of my supporters sending in 13 questions to the AMA. So first, I'm going to knock out a couple of his. These are the last two questions from him. First, Drake L. asks, if you got volunteered into a talent show and couldn't get out of it, what would you do on stage? Now, that's an interesting question. First of all, I wouldn't find myself in a situation that I couldn't get out of it. But taking your question as it stands, I would say I would have to do a dramatic reading of something interesting. Being an audiobook producer and narrator, and a podcast producer and host, along with tons of training on audiobooks, has granted me a specific set of skills in that area. Drake's final question is, what do you think of people who email in all caps and highlight and color sections for emphasis? I think they are literally the devil. End of story. Drake, thank you so much for all of your questions, but I must say I'm quite relieved to have them all done. And Daryl W. Perry never disappoints. He has a few questions this week as well. First, preface. I know you're a non-voter, though I further the reasons why. Can you explain again? Clearly Daryl does not listen to my other podcast, Essential Libertarianism. It was the material from the genesis of this podcast at voluntarist.com that led me to be a complete and utter non-voter. There is one specific set of 3 episodes in this podcast that finally took me over the edge. The name of these articles is The Ethics of Voting, and they were written by a man that I highly respect, George H. Smith, and it is a definitive answer to the question. They were episodes 32 through 34 of Essential Libertarianism, and you can listen to them in their entirety at essentiallibertarianism.com/32/33 and /34. But let me kind of paraphrase here. There's a thing in law called vicarious liability that's defined by Black's Law Dictionary as indirect legal responsibility. This is the sort of thing used to convict the driver of a getaway car in a bank robbery, for example. We as libertarians hold legislators accountable for their unjust laws, political executives accountable for their unjust directives, and judges accountable for their unjust decisions. Yet political and bureaucratic personnel rarely participate in law enforcement. They do not strap on guns and apprehend violators. This is left to the police. Therefore, we condemn the police as well because they're the ones actually perpetrating the violence. Clearly, therefore, the libertarian anarchist condemnation of the state as a criminal gang rests on the view that criminal liability can extend beyond the person who uses or threatens to use invasive force. Most of the individuals in government, though not directly involved in aggression, nevertheless aid and abet this process. Without vicarious liability, we could not even regard Hitler or Stalin as aggressors, so long as they did not personally enforce their monstrous orders. Given this fact, it follows that voters, in some cases at least, are deemed accountable by libertarians for the results of their votes, for example, legislators who vote for victimless crime laws. And this liability attaches, despite the fact that the voters do not engage directly in aggression or explicit threats of aggression. And as Wendy McElroy, another voluntarist that I respect dearly, she put it in her article called Why I Would Not Vote Against Hitler this way, And you can listen to this entire article at essentiallibertarianism.com/27. She says, the essential problem is not Hitler, but the institutional framework that allows a Hitler to grasp a monopoly on power. Without the state to back him up and an election to give him legitimized power, Hitler would have been, at most, the leader of some ragtag thugs who mugged people in back alleys. Voting for or against Hitler would only strengthen the institutional framework that produced him, a framework that would produce another of his ilk in 2 seconds. Killing Hitler does less damage, but it, like voting, is an admission of utter defeat. Resorting to brutal force means that all avenues of social power have been destroyed, and I have been reduced to adopting the tactics of the state. Under tyranny, such violence might be justified as long as I could avoid harming innocent third parties. In these circumstances, however, voting could not be justified because there is a third party. No one has the right to place one human being in a position of political power over another. A consistent libertarian can never authorize one human being to tax and control peaceful activities. And the state is no more than the institutionalized embodiment of this authorization. You cannot help freedom or social power by bowing your head to Leviathan. So I say, simply put, government is immoral. So stop giving it legitimacy. Stop working in the immoral institution. And stop playing their games. They want you to play their games. That should be a wake-up call, folks, and reason enough to not want to play.
Strange game. The only winning move is not to play.
And if you're still unsure about this or still on the fence, I highly recommend that everybody go listen to the full series on non-voting from the Voluntarist at essentiallibertarianism.com/non-voting. Daryl asked a follow-up to this question. He asks, if none of these candidates were a binding option on all ballots, and that seat went vacant if none of these candidates won, would you vote for NOTC? Why or why not? No, I would not. Because by voting, in any case, I am still giving legitimacy to their immoral system. I am still participating in showing that I find their game legitimate. I am still making myself complicit in their crimes. I am still playing their games. The only winning move is not to play. And Daryl had a final follow-up to this question. Would you support the implementation of quorum voting rules, where an election was declared void if less than 50% of voters cast a vote in a race? For example, 51% of voters received a ballot for state and county offices. However, 10% didn't vote for anyone running for county sheriff, meaning that election would be void. Why or why not? Simply put, no. For the exact same reasons I gave to your first follow-up question. Daryl, thank you so much for all the questions. I always enjoy getting them from you. I do have one more question from you that I didn't have time for in this episode, but I'll get to that next episode. Thanks for all the questions, guys. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite traveler, Jessica, for her help with the show. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on this show, go to thelavaflow.com/142. I have no new supporters this week, but thanks to all of my awesome supporters, I am at $233.25 per episode, or 47.5% of the way towards my next goal of $500 per episode. Thank you for all your support, guys. Really, it means a lot. Remember, when I hit this next goal, I will be upping the content that I bring you from half an hour per week to a full hour. I know that you want more content from me, and I want to give it to you. So add your pledge today to help me bring you twice the lava flow that you're getting today. So exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a donation of as little as $1 a week using Federal Reserve notes through my site or using cryptocurrencies through Bitbacker. I want to be able to bring you more content soon, so make sure to add your donation today to help make that happen. I don't have any new reviews since my last episode, but if you have a minute and you want to hear your review read right here on the show, please go to thelavaflow.com/Apple and leave me a rating and a review. All the cool kids are doing it. Thank you to everyone who's left me a rating and a review so far. You guys rock. To all of you who haven't, can you guys help me out and go leave a review for me? Go to thelavaflow.com/Apple to do that now. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.